Hey everybody, and welcome to another ranking video. So if you're not aware, every 10 new games that I play, I make a video like this and I rank these games from my least favourite up to my most favourite. We've got a bonus game this month making it up to 11, and because I happen to spill over to 11 by playing 2 new games on the same day. But before I get started on these games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get on with the games. Okay, so at number 11, I have by Paolo Mori. So this is kind of an abstract Civ style game, which is pretty much purely abstract, as you are using these tiles for their actions on them and then trying to spread presence on this. I believe it's a 6x6 grid. And then basically at the end of the game, for everything you have a presence on, you're going to score them in sets. To be honest, this was a big miss for me. It did not gel at all for me or my opponent. Despite there not being too many rules, I found all the actions kind of counterintuitive. I didn't find the rules really gelled with me very well, and I couldn't really suss out all the moving parts and see how they came together. So I just found it very jarring, and because that wasn't really clicking with me, I did struggle to find any fun from it, and we ended up playing the whole game without really knowing what was going on. So yeah, this was one that I'm not going to go back to. It just wasn't my cup of tea, really. At number 10, I have Marvel United, so a very popular cooperative game. Very lightweight, as you and your teammates are stringing these actions cards together by not only using the one that you've just played, but also the one previous to you. You're kind of moving around this rondel, you're fighting off these bad guys, all with the aim of trying to chip away at the health of kind of the major mastermind you're fighting against. For a gateway level cooperative game, I think it works pretty well. For me, generally, co-op games aren't my thing. I struggle to really, get invested in them. And that was pretty much this was like another example of that. But I can definitely see why people do like it. It's got a nice table presence. The miniatures are absolutely lovely to look at. But yeah, ultimately, just not my kind of game. And hence why, I'm not going to say it's bad, because it's certainly not, but it's not one that I'm going to be itching to play much more. At number 9, I have Skyward. So Skyward is an I split, you choose style game, a card game. And you actually do have to divide up quite a few cards in this one, more than I'm used to with these styles of games, as these cards are not only your resources, but also these buildings that you're trying to build, or even kind of abilities that you can use. And you're trying to race to get to a certain amount of buildings built, and all these buildings score in different ways, synergizing with different parts of the game. I think it works pretty well. I think the more you play it, the more familiar you get with the cards, that decision of how you're going to divide up those cards becomes more interesting. And it is quite a cool decision to make, where if you want a very specific card, you want to try and kind of lure your opponents away from taking that pile, because of course you get to choose last when you divide those piles up. So again, very, very delicate decision you have to make, and it works pretty well. So I have only played this once so far, so I do need to play it some more to understand if there is much depth here, and if that more familiarity is going to make the game better or not. But right now, it's decent, and I'll certainly play it some more. At number 8, I have Bali, which very narrowly missed out on a commendation, and it could even creep up to a commendation with more plays, and because I have only played this at 2 players so far, and I have a feeling that it will get better with the higher player counts. So this is kind of a commodity speculation style game, a card driven game, as you're playing a very small, or managing a very small hand of cards, to build up a bit of an engine to get discounts on other cards. And then you are drawing cards back up from this kind of these four columns of cards on display. Those cards will not only replenish your hand, but they'll also trigger an action for everybody. So say, for example, you drew a card up, and the one that you've just revealed will maybe replenish everybody's stone, or they'll give you so they'll give you resources, all these goods that you're trying to collect. So you do have to kind of bear those two things in mind, not only the card you want to pick up, but also the action you are going to trigger. And then every now and then, should you save up enough stone, you can cash in these cards that are these kind of shrines, I suppose, and then they are going to allow you to put cards or sacrifice cards in order to raise the value of certain types of cards. But that's done pretty blindly, so you do not know with exact information if the cards you're collecting are going to be worth the most or the least points. So it's quite interesting how you have to speculate and kind of maybe use some tactical maneuverability to change your strategy on what you're trying to collect or invest to boost the cards that you have the most of. I do think there's a few teething issues here, like for example in the game we've just played, the stone resources, which is kind of the main resource in the game, all those cards didn't really come out until the end, meaning that we were kind of pulling teeth through the first half of the game. But when those resources started to stream in, it became a lot more enjoyable. So again, the jury is still out for a final verdict, but it's promising. I'm not sure if it'll get past that kind of final finish line to get into accommodation, but it is close already. Okay, so I actually have 7 commendations this month, and this might be the biggest or the highest ratio of commendations that I've ever done, nearly 70% here. So first up, at number 7, I have Trekking Through History. So this is a lovely, charming family weight kind of set collection drafting style game. As you're drafting cards from this board, these cards give you these tokens which you're using to fill up your little personal player sheet, unlocking points as you go. Kind of the deeper you dive onto these sheets, the more points you can get, but it comes with the risk of not being able to complete them. But you're also collecting these cards based on the years they have on them, because the longer runs of years you have on these cards without breaking that pattern, the more points you're going to get at the end. Some good little tactical decisions here. Thinking ahead about, am I going to leave myself enough room to get more recent years, or am I going to have to start again? What's going to be the best benefit? Getting those experience tokens or getting the new cards. So just kind of those two mechanisms competing against each other, all tied together through a time track, where the better cards usually cost you more time, meaning that you're not going to get a turn again until everybody else has caught up with you. So those 3 mechanisms blend together really well. It doesn't try to be anything it doesn't want to be, and it's just a really breezy game with quite a bit of bite for only a 30-minute game. So I really like this one. It's gone down well with everyone I've played it with, and it's just a really nice production. So that is Trekking Through History at number 7. At number 6, I have Wizards of the Grimoire. So this is a game that has certainly been the biggest surprise for me of the month, because generally I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of deck versus deck dueling style games where you're trying to eliminate each other's health points. But this one is something special, and putting this at 6 out of 11 of the month is giving this game a huge disservice really, because any other month this would probably be a top 3 or even top 2 game. Because the little tableau of 6 cards you can build with this game is absolutely fascinating. The way these cards synergize with each other as you are kind of drafting cards from this communal row, so you don't have your own personal deck, you are both sharing a pool of cards. You are collecting mana, you're using mana cards to activate these cards. The better cards have longer cooldowns, but you have loads of little kind of manipulation tools to maybe speed your cooldowns up or slow your opponent's cards down, eliminate cards from your opponent's hand. All these kind of things you can do, and it seems like whatever you can do in this game, there's a counter spell for it, and it's all about trying to build that little efficient engine of 6 cards to be as powerful as you can, and even adjust on the fly by replacing cards as you go, as your needs change throughout the game. It kind of feels like a hybrid between something like Res Arcana and Magic the Gathering, and right now this is undoubtedly the best 2-player dueling game I've ever played, and I'm really excited to try some more of it and find some more of those combos. Definitely a hidden gem here, and I was really impressed considering I wasn't even expecting to like it too much. So that is Wizards of the Grimoire at number 6. At number 5, I have Titania, which is by Rudiger Dorn, and this is certainly one of his most unknown, uncelebrated games. But I'm not quite sure why, because I thought this game has some very cool concepts and is pretty thinky. So this one you have a hand of cards representing these different coloured boats, and you're playing these cards out. You can play up to 3 per turn, but the more cards you play, the fewer cards you draw, on vice versa. So you could say play 1 card and draw 2, you can play no cards and draw 3, you can play 3 cards and draw none. And then what you're trying to do is you're trying to spread out these boats, chaining them together, getting these shells, getting these starfish, building these towers to get more points. The higher you build up these towers, the more resources they cost, but it means you don't have to maybe spread out so far. No matter what you do in this game, you are laying something on the plate of another player. It's all about trying to weigh up who is going to gain the most, and not only giving yourself opportunities, but knowing, not to give your opponent too great opportunities either. So it really does have that push and pull, when to sit back, when to push, but you're always put under this pressure of there being a very limited pool of these boats available, and as soon as one of those colours of boats are depleted, the round is going to end immediately. So you can't just sit back too much and wait for the good opportunities, because if you do, you're going to leave with pretty much nothing. It kind of feels like an older KIENDA style game, something like Through the Desert, but with an element of hand management, and it just works really well for what it does. I think the flow is broken a little bit because halfway through the game you are pretty much taking everything off the board and starting again, which was a bit of a shame. It would have been nice if you can get it all over in kind of one kind of free-flowing phase, but it's a very minor nitpick, and I'm still enjoying this one quite a lot. So I have recorded a review of this one. I'm not sure how well it'll do because this is an obscure game. At number 4, I have The Tower of Babel. So this is a Reiner Knizia kind of negotiation area majority style game, as you are trying to contribute to build these 7 or 8 wonders of the world. You're doing that by putting your marker on one of these wonders and then kind of managing your hand of cards to try and build them. But if you can't build them, you can accept offers from the other players. You can accept one player's offer, you can accept all the players' offers. And if you do that and you successfully complete the building, you're going to put one of your building markers down on that particular wonder, and that is going to be a competition for area control when it comes to being complete. However, every offer that you do not accept from another player, they are going to get the equal amount of victory points. And then on top of that, you're trying to collect the tokens of the wonders themselves, because they're going to score you set collection bonuses. So it really is a pairing off about which is going to give you the most, when to accept offers from other people. Do I accept all their resources with the aim of preventing them getting those 5 points or whatever it is, which can be quite significant. So it really is a trade-off. Maybe you want to build the whole wonder yourself, but give your opponent a bunch of points. Really, really interesting little decisions here. I do think it takes a game or two to understand how to optimize your decisions, but for me, I'm enjoying exploring that decision space and seeing how things kind of fit together and what the kind of what the optimal decisions are to make. But nice that this one scales well from like 3 to 5 players, which a lot of negotiation games don't do, well at that 3 players, but this one certainly does. So at the moment, I'm liking it a lot. My 4th best game of this block of games, but I got a feeling this one could creep up. So that is The Tower of Babel at number 4. At number 3, we are staying on the old school games trend, and it's another Rudiger Dawn game with Arcadia. So this game, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel about it because it is pretty abstract, and abstract games are generally hit or miss for me. But this one has some polyomino placement here, as you are playing these buildings onto the board, and you're trying to surround these buildings with other buildings, as well as your own kind of workers, I suppose. And as soon as a building is kind of entrapped by other buildings or workers, then you're going to gain these coins. And then you have the option 4 times in the game to trade those coins in for points. But the twist on this one is that whenever you complete a building, you get to manipulate how much each coin is worth by placing these little castle pieces on this kind of communal market, I suppose. So if you're collecting silver coins and you have a lot of them, you might want to boost the value of those silver coins by maybe diminishing the value of another coin, and then cash in all your silver coins while it's at optimal price point before your opponents start chipping away at it again. So it really does have that, again, another degree of commodity speculation, where you've got to strike when the iron is hot and sell those coins or get rid of those coins when the price of return is the highest. And that can be quite difficult because you're not quite sure what your opponents have. Maybe they'll even boost the value again before you sell them, or maybe they could, they could diminish it. So it does have that tension on when to do the right thing. So that timing comes into play. It has a nice flow to it, very accessible but still thinky. Another game a bit like Titania, where whatever you do gives opportunities to your opponents. You need to make sure you have the right cards in your hand to complete your own buildings. And another game that scales really well. I wasn't quite sure how this was going to play at 2 players, whether it was going to be a bit too rigid, but it turns out it was a lot of fun, and I'm pretty much ready to record a review of this one. And something I didn't mention is that this game has amazing table presence. It really does look like you're building a nice little town as the game goes on. So that's Arcadia, really impressed, nice throwback feel to it, and it's just extremely enjoyable. At number 2, I have Darwin's Journey. So this is certainly the hotness at the moment, the latest Simone Luciani game, along with Nestor Mangoni, great design duo there. This is your medium heavyweight Euro, probably going to be one of the best ones or the most successful ones of the year. It's been a long time coming after I backed this on Kickstarter a couple of years ago. It has all the Euro trappings you'd expect, climbing tracks, getting multipliers, exploring islands and getting new species as you go, putting them on this grid, getting money, climbing up more tracks, all these things. And it's all held together through this very clever worker placement system, as your workers are kind of tailorable as the game goes on. As you can give them these seals, the seals will give them strengths and weaknesses in different areas. You can make a very specialized worker, or you can make them more flexible, as you can unlock more spots as you go. It definitely is kind of a kitchen sink style game, but I was actually really surprised and pleasantly surprised how intuitive the game was. This is one of those games where I think if you left it a while before playing it again, you could have a quick jog or quick look and reminder at the rulebook, and that would jog your memory pretty quickly. And you don't really have those fiddly rules minutiae and little exceptions to the rules that a lot of these games have. And that's normally a big positive for me. So I was a little bit apprehensive about how much I was going to enjoy this one, because my general enjoyment of heavier weight Euros has diminished somewhat. But this was a real good reminder as to why I like these styles of games, because the way all the mechanisms harmonise here was really quite impressive. So yeah, glad this one lived up to my expectations. That is Darwin's Journey at number 2. And finally, the best game out of the bunch. At number 1, I have Rise. So Rise very narrowly beating out Darwin's Journey and Arcadia. But this one really did, again, take me by surprise. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel about this one, because I did see some mixed reviews on it. But this game is all about climbing tracks, and one track will link to the next track, which will link to the next track. So if you like your combos, almost like a roll and write style game, this game has that in abundance. This is all about this, or that's what this game is all about. But I do love the kind of action selection system here, as you have your kind of your player pawn, and you're placing it on these cards to show the actions that you want. You either have a basic action, or you can have something you can pay for to give you a kind of a boosted action. But for every one of these event cards that you pass, which becomes more expensive, you get to trigger them, which might give you bonus actions. So it's all about thinking, do I want this action, but I kind of want these events as well. And if I don't go to these actions here, then I'm not going to trigger these events. Really interesting, is you have to kind of weigh up the happiness of your people or suffer punishments. You have to climb up tracks which are going to give you pure points. You're going to get these little bonus tokens. Just again, it has all that really kind of satisfying dopamine hits, as you'd expect with, again, a roll and write style game. So I'm really enjoying this one. I think it's really satisfying, and it's actually really easy to play. Maybe a little bit of potential to be a bit confusing at times and lose track to how you're doing, or monitoring how many actions you've actually resolved and how many you've got left, because there is, again, so much potential to string things together. But hey, that's part and parcel of these styles of games, and the admin that you have to do to keep up with that is more than worth it. So there we have it. That concludes the video. Another 11 games here, and having 7 out of 11 recommendations is pretty much unheard of. It's very rare that I get that many. In fact, it's normally 1 or 2 games. So it goes to show that the games I'm choosing now are a bit more tailor-made, and I'm a bit more confident that I'm going to like them. But if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other videos too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.